Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Ana Martinez and welcome to the second UrBIOfuture webinar. I am part of the team of Sustainable Innovations Europe, one of the partners of the UrBIOfuture webinar, of the UrBIOfuture project, which is organizing this webinar. I'm going to be the carrier and the moderator of this webinar, and I really hope you enjoy it. As you can see, there is a chat where you can send me any questions that you have throughout the webinar, and I will be telling them to our speakers. Please don't be shy and send us any doubts, comments, any questions you may have. Also, at the end of the session, I will provide you with an email address where you can send us anything that you think of afterwards. So educational gaps and skills mismatch in the European bioeconomy is our second webinar organized by the UrBIOfuture project. We are going to explain more in detail what is the project about afterwards, but in brief, UrBIOfuture is an initiative that aims to bridge the gap between the educational programs that we have nowadays in Europe that address curricula in the bio-based industry and the actual needs of this industry, of the companies, of the institutions related to this field. So the webinar is targeted at anyone interested in what the bioeconomy is, its impact in the European Union, and the skills mismatch in this field. I'm going to turn off my camera now so that you can focus on the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you the agenda. And okay, so this is the agenda we are going to follow today. We are going to have, well, this is the introduction that I'm doing. Then our colleagues from Vito will explain what the bioeconomy is and how it's impacting our daily lives and how it's important. We are going to have a brief introduction to the UrBIOfuture project for those of you who doesn't know it yet. And we are going to explore the educational gaps identified in the European bioeconomy. Our colleagues from VTT will present us the results and impact of the BioRookie case study they've been performing in Finland. And last but not least, we are going to see more information about the UrBIOfuture experience and the upcoming actions arranged by this project. So now that I've introduced myself and the webinar, I would first of all like to know some more details about you. So I'm going to proceed to do a quick survey. Some of you have filled it in advance. So if you have done that, you don't need to do it again. But if you haven't, I would really appreciate if you could fill it in now and provide me with some basic information about you all so that we can use this information later for the feedback and to see which kind of audience is interested in our materials, let's say. So I'm going, so
there you go.
You can fill it in. Okay, a few seconds more for those who didn't vote. And I'll move to the next one. Okay, I'm moving to the next one now. Few more seconds. Moving into the next one now. This one is really easy, so Moving on to the next one. Okay, and the last one, this one is just basically to know if you would like to subscribe to our newsletter and keep tuned about the news. We issue it every couple of months, and we share there all the news and updates about the project. Okay. Okay, so I'm closing in 2 seconds. Okay, closing it now. So thank you very much for your collaboration with this. Now I'm gonna give control to my colleague Dieter Kuipers from Vito, who will start presenting his part. So please, Dieter, whenever you are ready, you can start with your part. I'm gonna mute my microphone now. Thank you. Hi, Dieter. I don't know if... Hi, now I
Anna?
can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but I was not able to share my screen. I couldn't push the button. So could you try it again to launch it again?
Yes, I'm launching again.
I was offered 3 options, but I couldn't click any of them.
Okay, hold on. Now you are presenter.
Yes, but choose what you'd like to share. Oh, okay. Okay, I guess we're there.
Okay, yes, I can see your screen now. Thank you, and sorry for that. These are the troublesome of the live.
Okay, good. Just a second. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. I am Dieter Kuipers from Vito in Belgium, and I'm going to kick off straight away. In the former UrBIOfuture webinar, I touched upon the reasons for the industry and the European Commission to invest heavily in the transformation of the bioeconomy and explained which place the bio-based sector takes within it. Now I will try to give an idea about the anticipated transformation of these sectors, transformations that will need a skilled workforce to realize them. Thus, I will look ahead, but first by looking back too. So in the same webinar, I provided a scheme to explain the difference between these 2 sectors. I introduced the terms again as the EU's bioeconomy strategy refers to the bioeconomy as a whole. But the bio-based sector holds some specific challenges, but many promises as well. So I'm not going to read it completely. The bioeconomy is mainly about biological resources, functions, and principles. That's easily said. Let me give some examples to make it tangible when we talk about biological resources. For example, bread is made from wheat. And at the same time, I actually give an example of how a biological function is in this too, because of course bread is being made by yeast. For functions, an example is, for example, pharmaceuticals, which are made by organisms. And when we talk about principles, I'm sorry, I'm clicking too fast. Sorry. When we talk about principles, For example, circularity is a biological principle. Just look at the food pyramid. A top predator dies, it decays and is being eaten by saprophages. Its molecules are broken down and the whole circle of life starts again. And then when we look at the bio-based economy, this is actually a subset of the bioeconomy. It is the bioeconomy minus the food and feed sector. And this sector produces conventional bio-based products, of which some are listed here, and more recently developed bio-based products. The latter category needs the prefix bio as they formerly only existed as synthetic substances and materials. That said, I already touched upon changes and transformations, and I would like to give a bit of a historical perspective on sector transformation. By giving this historical perspective, we can also look at what kind of transformation is needed in the future. So there are many sectors that have since adopted many of the benefits of the technological innovations that have taken place, and they replaced conventional bioproducts with novel synthetic products. I try to sketch this by providing a bit the story of plastics. The story of plastics or synthetic polymers has had such a tremendous impact on our lives. Plastics replaced a lot of conventional bio-based materials, but they have also been able to respond to technological and societal developments and even drive those developments with novel materials and products that have become indispensable in our modern lives. We only have to go back a century. There were no synthetics. You could say, we used to live in a bioeconomy or a bio-based economy. This was, of course, supplemented by ores for our metals, rock, soil components, and so on. And any materials that used to come from that, well, came to be replaced by plastics, they were bio-based. For example, ivory, bone, tusks, antlers, shellac, other resins, taguanates. I just show some of them which are still being used, but they have become to be replaced. For example, in the lower left, you can see shellac, which is actually an excretion from a bug, and is still being used for nail polish or musical instrument finishes, but it was used as an electric insulator. And then on the top right, you can see tagua nuts, for example. These are hardened fruits from a palm tree, and it's called vegetable ivory. They were an important source for clothing buttons, which today, of course, are in plastic. And just look at this picture. This is a picture from New York about a century ago. But there are no plastics in this picture, while it contains a lot of features that today are in plastic. Okay. Some important discoveries were done in the second half of the 19th century, for example, in the search for a substitute for ivory, celluloid was created. This was still bio-based because it was made from cellulose. This material is still being used for example, ping pong balls and guitar picks. But of course, the big change came with the invention of Bakelite, the material of 1,000 uses. This was a synthetic material as it was made from phenol, a benzene derivative. For the millennials attending, this is a picture of a telephone. And of course, in the 20s and the 30s, a lot of new materials came up, polystyrene, polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride, nylon, and so on. But real change came with World War II. Ironically, in contrast to today, it was the need to preserve scarce natural resources that made the plastic industry boom. They were producing nylon for textile applications like parachutes, ropes. For example, they use plexiglass for plane windows and so on. And I just chose some inspiring posters from that time to make people save petrol, paper, metal, food, and all kind of resources. And I believe that these posters are still relevant today, though not because of wartime reasons, but rather because of sustainability reasons. And we can say that a synthetic economy started off in all sectors, or it even created sectors of their own. The petrochemical sector up to then was mainly concerned with energy and now became a massive material producer too. And plastic started to replace many other materials, outcompeting them thanks to their versatility, because they originated just from one common cheap feedstock from a refinery. Plastics could actually respond to many calls for new functionalities, or they even changed the way innovation worked. First, a new plastic was found, and then they started looking for an application. Plastics are everywhere. Just look around. There were endless opportunities, and seemingly at first there were no disadvantages. In the meanwhile, we have a plastic soup drifting around in every ocean. Microplastics all around, and there are some concerns over toxicity. And we can add to that the fact that they are based upon fossil feedstocks, meaning there is no renewability. They are a source of greenhouse gas emissions. There is not much flexibility because we only have one feedstock. And of course, we have a dependency upon less reliable countries, and even wars are linked to this feedstock. Because of the many problems, one could say that we should return to the traditional bioeconomy. But actually, the main challenge is that we can combine these technological developments that we had in the meantime and the many interesting properties of plastics and look for a more sustainable way to produce and use them by turning them into bio-based plastics. And that's what is happening now within this industry. And now it is the other way around. We have developed plastics as a synthetic substitute for biomaterials. And what we now want to do is develop them bio-based as substitutes for synthetic materials. So new plastics are being produced, but for now we're still talking about 1% of the global plastics market, a market which is clearly going to increase owing to all the pledges big companies have made regarding their plastic use. And to give an overview of what is happening, we can classify plastics based upon what they are made of, the source, and how they potentially can be disposed of, the sink. We all know the conventional plastics based upon fossil feedstocks and not degradable, up to an extent recyclable. But what does recyclable mean? Requiring just a huge chunk of energy. Are we using it for other purposes? How many times can we recycle them? So that's first category. That's what we all know. And most of the innovation and market development these days in bioeconomy is happening in the domain of bioplastics, mainly in what is being called drop-in bioplastic, as it allows for using the same technologies downstream, making it easier. Only the feedstock differs. These are the so-called plant bottles, but also the greenery elements, for example, in Lego. They are bioplastic since a few years. Don't be fooled, however, they can still be part of the plastic soup. Then another category are the biodegradable bioplastics. Watch out. Usually this means degradable in very specific conditions. So don't think you can just cast those plastics in your backyard and let them rot. That probably won't work. For example, polylactic acid is such an example. But within this class is another interesting interesting class. And those are the compostable bioplastics. These address both the source and the sink issue. And yes, to make it even more complex, there are even biodegradable plastics which are made from fossil resources. And I actually forgot to show a conventional product here. It's the typical polypropylene curver box. I have such a box. I used to collect my glass bottles for recycling, and it's actually the same box that I used 35 years ago to put my toys in. So I just want to show that we should rather look at how we are using a material, and especially its end of life, and decide which kind of plastic is most sustainable for that use. The sustainability of something depends upon its use. Is a biodegradable pen better than a plastic metal fountain pen? A biodegradable pen that you only use for for a few months and then throw away. And well, if you use a fountain pen, how many biodegradable pens, for example, are those? And is it useful for a pen being biodegradable if it ends up incinerated? So there is a plethora of opportunities as these developments can transform whole sectors. The non-conventional bio-based sector is driving this transformation and has its leverage effects on the bioeconomy as a whole, leading to a revitalization of biomass producing and manufacturing sectors due to new interest in biomaterials. And it also stimulates regional and rural development as land is needed to grow biomass or the feed for bio-based processes. And side streams will be utilized better, and so these transformations will also influence formerly non-bio-based sectors, fine and commodity, chemicals, healthcare, automotive, construction, consumer goods, where their conventional products are, but also their processes will become more and more bio-based. Of course, companies and policymakers can desire all these transformations, and our environmental conditions might require it, but it's the people who have to do it. Therefore, a skilled workforce is needed to realize these transformations. And also pilot plants are needed to develop new materials and processes. So this concludes my short overview as an intro to the rest of the webinar. And I would like to end stressing that the bio-based economy has a potential to be more sustainable, but that it isn't just because it has the prefix bio in it. We could as well use some green paint. It is not about just changing feedstocks or processes and just carry on. It's about changes in society as a whole. It needs to be integrated within a circular economy. I hope to have given a clear example of how important it is to, for example, tailor bio-based approaches to their specific use contexts. Producing drop-in plastics to again litter them into the ocean doesn't solve the problem, but neither would it be useful for my curver box to start degrading after a few years. I'm pretty sure that if it's not vandalized, I will be able to use it for another half a century. So this concludes my introduction. I also left a slide with references, and I would now like to give the floor to my colleagues who will continue this webinar.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Dieter. It's really great. I'm gonna now, let me see if I can, because I still can see your screen. Let me show mine instead. Here it is. Okay. So now, well, it's been really interesting. I don't know if you guys have any further questions, or you want to ask. Yeah, someone is asking if the presentations will be sent to the emails. Yes, we can. We will be sending you an email tomorrow with a certificate of participation, and you will also receive. You will be able to download all the presentations from there. So now I'm gonna present the video that the UAB project coordinators recorded, explaining a brief introduction to the UrBIOfuture project. So I'm gonna start it now.
Hello, good morning. Here is Aleix Barrera from Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. I'm going to introduce a little bit UrBIOfuture project. We also introduced the project in the previous webinar, but here we are going to give you the main ideas of the project. As you can see in the presentation, we are the coordinators of the project, and we are 9 partners from 7 different countries. The project was funded by the European Commission through BBI, and this is the total amount of the budget that we have. As you can see, we are representing different countries and regions of Europe. So we have some partners from the north of Europe, also from the middle of Europe, and also from the south of Europe in the Mediterranean. The main idea of this presentation is to show you which are the objectives of this project. As you can see, the main objective is to map the completed and ongoing programs addressing curricula that involve bio-based activities. We also pretend to foster the interaction and alignment among educational and research institutions and industry. We are right now working on that. We also pretended to identify current education and professional gaps and skills mismatch in the bio-based field. And we're going to introduce you something about that during this webinar. And we also pretend to provide the bio-based industry and sector with a basis for promoting careers in the bio-based sector, the so-called UrBIOfuture experience. And as you can see in the program, we are also going to explain something about this UrBIOfuture experience in this webinar. And as part of the 5th objective, the dissemination and exploitation of UrBIOfuture, we are doing this webinar to let you know what are we working about within the project. This is the project path. Now we are working in this last part, so we are starting to finish the project. We are supposed to finish in April, so we have been developing the mapping of current programs. We also identified which are the skills needed for the industry in the 2030, and now we are working in this process to disseminate which are our results, and also to create this UrBIOfuture experience where we pretend to engage people from our society, students, unemployed people, and also companies to come to this sector, to the bioindustry sector. So this is the main idea of the project. I expect that today you will have more insights in the project in the following presentations. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Alex. Now, Alex is going to introduce us to the educational gaps that have been identified during the research of the project.
I'm going to introduce you which are the main educational gaps we identified in the bioeconomy sector within UrBIOfuture project. The process that we follow to identify the gaps is the one that you can see now in the presentation. We analyzed the general context, and we also analyzed which are the general actors from the bioindustry. And we try to obtain some data from both parts, trying to identify which are the needs of the industry, especially trying to know what should be done in the 2030 scenario, and also what should be taught in the 2030 scenario. To do that, we analyzed which is the current situation, but we make the stakeholders thinking which will be their situation in 2030. And we analyze the current programs, educational programs, trying to know if they are prepared to tote what is supposed to be needed in the 2030 in the bioindustry sector. So mixing this data and confronting this data, we find out which are the gaps or the dysfunctions to avoid and the needs to be satisfied in the scenario 2030. So what we analyzed, in the case of educational programs, in the mapping, we analyzed more than 1,000 programs. This educational programs map is available for all the stakeholders and also for the society in general in our website. And the analysis of these 912 programs is available in the different reports that we have uploaded in our website. The programs analyzed are from 26 countries, so mainly all European countries are represented in this educational programs map. The sample analyzed, if we focus on the educational level, we saw that mostly we analyzed programs at master level, followed by undergraduate, then PhD and BET. The reason why we didn't get so many information from BET programs, vocational and vocational training programs, is because there was no information available in the websites. So we analyzed the data available in the websites, and this is the reason why we didn't get so many information. The place where we find more information is in the master degree and undergraduate, because universities have some of this information available. And in the case of PhD, the information was also available on the websites, but there are less PhD programs than the other ones. What we did to identify the stakeholders' needs, we worked with focus groups. We developed 5 focus groups and also 11 in-depth interviews. Totally, we had 58 participants, 27 in the focus group and 11 in the interviews. And as you can see in the presentation, some countries were represented: Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Netherlands. And here you have the average profile of the participants. We also developed a survey where we get results from 152 stakeholders. We tried to achieve more than 2,000 stakeholders, but finally this was the sample that we could use to do the analysis, because we only used the surveys which were completed. Here you have the main sectors of activity represented on these survey answers. So which were the main gaps we find out? We analyzed the data considering the general competences and also some specific competences. Here we highlight the competences where we find that there are more needs or there are more gaps in that case, if we analyze the current programs and the stakeholders' needs. If we start by management, we saw that project management is one of the most demanded subcompetences for the year 2030, and especially in the level of master and PhD. If we contrast this data with the current programs, we saw that its presence has to be improved at PhD level, because there is an important role of this kind of professionals doing project management, and we didn't saw in the programs we analyzed that this competence is highly developed in this level. In the case of management, stakeholders also consider that this is the development of business models is also important, and despite this is one of the most prioritized subcompetences by them, the current educational programs provide little development in this area. So should this subcompetence, the development of business models, should be included, especially at the master and PhD levels. In the case of sustainability and industry, the stakeholders highlight that circular economy and zero waste industry is some of the aspects that they will need in the following years. And in that case, we saw that educational programs at all levels should increase the presence of this content in their curricula, because we didn't saw that they are working on that or in deep in that moment. In the case of the third competence, technology and STEAM, we realized or we obtained data from the stakeholders where they said that there is a need of key enabling technologies for the bio-based industries. This is the highest rated subcompetences in the context of technology, but we saw that its presence in master's and undergraduate degrees seems to be somehow aligned with what the industry needs, but especially efforts should be made at BET level, where this competence seemed to be neglected according to the programs analyzed. So we must focus on BET, especially in the key enabling technologies. In the case of digital skills, these are also highly rated by stakeholders, and they are required at all levels, particularly at BET and undergraduate. However, we saw that very little effort is put in these skills by educational programs. So we must work on that too. In the case of research and innovation, this is one of the competences which is going to be more important during the following years. And here we saw that the stakeholders consider that innovation and change is one of the most important sub-competences. And they consider that this will be required at all educational levels, but more intensively developed at master's level. So this is important to be considered by higher education institutions. We also saw that they consider important, in the case of research and innovation, the path from the lab, the laboratory, to the industry. They say that they have some innovations in the lab, but it's important to get the industry and also the market. So its need is a very high priority for stakeholders, whereas it is the skill which is the less represented in programs from this group at all educational levels. So this is something that we expect that educational institutions should develop in their educational programs. In the case of social responsibility, we saw that there is a preoccupation with the stakeholders, especially with ethical responsibilities. This is the second priority for them, and we observe its presence at all educational levels. However, stakeholders consider it's more needed in undergraduate and master level, but its presence in these levels, it's not as higher as it is supposed. So more work has to be done to intensify the presence of ethical responsibility at undergraduate and master levels. We're going to the last one of the general competences. We saw that in the case of sales and marketing, there is an important subcompetence which is highlighted by the stakeholders, which is the increasing the consumer society awareness on the bio-based products. So there is an imbalance is absorbed in the stakeholders' top priority, but these subcompetences in the academia, it's virtually absent at all educational levels. So it's important to increase its presence in all educational levels, especially the awareness on bio-based products. So if we move to the main gaps in the case of the specific competences, in that case, we just have 5 competences identified, and what the stakeholders said, considering that ones. In the case of the first one, we saw that there is important to increase bio-based market knowledge and techno-economical expertise, especially in the case of PhD and BEd. We analyzed the educational programs and we saw that these competences is somehow developed in the case of undergraduate and masters, but the stakeholders also think that this should be increased in the case of PhD and also in the case of BEd. So they want to see all kinds of professionals from all educational levels prepared with this competence, and they don't realize that this is working nowadays. So in the case of the second one, the technical expertise in sustainable bio-based production, we saw that the subcompetences life cycle assessment of processes, biorefineries, and bio-based value chains should be present in all educational programs and more intensively at master's and PhD levels. So some work has to be done also in these competence. In the case of the third specific competence, the one related to technical expertise in primary conversion processes, we saw that stakeholders ask for new processes to improve bioproducts yield from bio-waste. So according to them, this subcompetence is a top priority from this group of subcompetences. And if we look at the educational programs analyzed, we saw that this is not really present in the current programs. So it has to be increased its presence, and especially it has to be represented in VET levels, where the stakeholders consider that this will be worked in that area, in that level, but we didn't observe the presence of this competence in VET level. If we move on to technical expertise in secondary and conversion processes, here we saw that the biopolymer processing to obtain different materials such as films, fibers, structural composites for automotive agriculture building, this is highly reported by stakeholders as a need, but In that case, they consider that this is important at master's and PhD level, but we didn't saw its presence at PhD level. So it should be developed, these sub-competences, and increased at PhD level. And in the last specific competence, technical expertise in materials, products, and functionalization, we saw that stakeholders consider that new functional bio-based materials and products, such as plastics, composites, based on lignin, starch, or nanocellulose or carbon fibers, there is an imbalance between the top prioritization made by them and its presence in the educational programs. It is highly required at PhD level and followed by master's and undergraduate level. In both levels, its presence should be increased because we didn't saw this content in the programs that we analyzed. So which are the main conclusions that we get with this report, the report we developed? Here you have the main conclusions, but first one is that the European reality is complex, so it should be also developed some specific reports in a specific context. This is a main report where we analyzed Europe as a whole, but we saw that there are some high differences between the different regions where we get the data. That it's important to work to improve the competences of professionals, to help them to transfer ideas or results that they find out in the lab to the industry. How can we put these lab ideas to the market? We also have to focus on sustainability and circular economy and value chain. We saw that this is so important for the stakeholders, and we saw the presence of these competences in some educational programs, but it should be increased, its presence. We also saw that it's important to train more professionals with competences related to research and innovation, and not only at PhD level, but also at master level and undergraduate. And it's important to improve the collaboration between industry and educational system. We will work now in the BioRookie case, where we try to find out some ideas of how can we improve this collaboration. So now my colleague is going to explain something about that. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, so as Alex said, now our colleague Mika from VTT is going to present the BioRookie case study and the lessons learned from it. So Mika, please, you can go ahead and show your presentation. I will mute my microphone.
Yes, so hello everybody. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Well enough, there was some connection problems earlier. So you see my screen. Yes, my name is Mika Härkönen. I come from VTT, the Technical Research Center of Finland. And my main task here is to develop our pilot plant infrastructure. And in this webinar, I will tell something the results of the so-called BioRookie case study. BioRookie means it's a pilot center that VTT has in Finland. By the way, it's an old Finnish name, and in English, BioRookie means biofactory. But okay, as already showed or told last time, there has been a couple of times mentioned that the piloting is important, and piloting means different to different people. So in this case, piloting means a kind of a process industry or level in process development. It's something between the laboratory and the industrial processes when we are developing new process technology to produce new products. That is very typically needed in the process industry also if we are doing new bio-based products. There is quite many of these kind of pilot plants, or some of these pilot plants in Europe are owned by research institutes or universities, so there is even some independent companies, and they're called open access shared pilot facilities. That means that basically everybody can come there to do the scale up. If they, of course, they have to pay for the service. But these kind of pilot plants, so the meaning was, how can we utilize these kind of pilot plants and in education of bioeconomy. Yes, so as I mentioned already, the VTT Biology Pilot Center is a pilot unit that it hosts several process lines, several kind of technologies, but very common denominator is that we very often are developing new products and new process concepts from biomass, waste, or industrial side streams. And there's different technology platforms we are using to make these new more sustainable products. There's some examples in the right hand bottom corner, so fuels from waste of biomass, or new textile fibers, or chemicals and materials from biomass. Even plastic recycling is now very much on agenda. So this is the kind of infrastructure we are talking about. Physically, you see, I will test in my last slide, there's some more pictures about what the equipment are, but they are basically process equipment. They're closer to industrial processes than laboratory, but they are much smaller than industrial processes. So basically good training places for people who are studying process technologies, for example, or material technologies. In the case study, why we did this, as mentioned already, so how can these pilot infrastructures be efficiently utilized in education? I know personally that I've been contacted many universities and also vocational schools, that I mean the laboratories and the pilot halls at the universities are less and less. They're expensive. They are not used, so and people are studying more and more with the computers. That's of course very important, but it would be also good to see a little bit on practice how these technologies are scaled up, because I mean, if you make a bio-based product, you still need a process to make a product out of that, and that has to be effective and cost effective and working process. So that was the how can we utilize the infrastructures, and how we did it. We had a lot of interviews. We identified needs and potential partners, cooperation options, also barriers. What is the problem today? And we made some key practices, and there's an action plan also made to implement those. Basically, this picture shows a little bit what has been done. So we have used many ways. There has been interviews of some stakeholders in this area, online questionnaire to universities or other institutes in Finland. We have face-to-face interviews with educational people, teachers, administration. We had a workshop with those people, and there we together thought of how they could utilize our infrastructure, and how we could, of course, then utilize their students and their experts in the work. And the report was made. Now I realize that we haven't yet discussed so much with the students, but that will come also. We will have in March a kind of open day at our pilot plant, where we will also raise these questions with the actual students who will be our kind of users of the pilot plant infrastructure. Okay, then a little bit the results. The survey, the web survey, there was a lot of questions, but maybe the most important outcome was that there was a need and interest to utilize these pilot infrastructures in education. Maybe the most interesting was, as shown here, that we could host visit for students, that they come and see the pilot plants in real life. And also the pilots could be kind of training or training place for the students. And then of course some other networking opportunities. But generally there was big interest, and that was of course good to see that there is a need. It came up also in the previous presentation that also the industry sees that these piloting skills are something that are, and scale-up skills are something that are needed to be improved, and the training there. So as a conclusion, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities and there's good ideas, and there's also action plan made, but there's also some challenges. And I started now with the most feasible opportunities that our workshops and interviews came up. And of course, the most kind of easy and also useful way to utilize pilot plant is to organize some kind of thematic visits that are part of the educational program in the universities or even high schools. I mean, this could be also place for younger students or younger people to kind of show that what can be done in order to so-called save the world. I mean, there's a lot of things to be done, and there's a lot of things that are ongoing, but they are not always so simple. You need a lot of process steps. But this kind of thematic visit that combined with kind of lectures and workshops, and then also see what the pilots are doing in practice, could be rather easily organized. Then of course this kind of training or internship placements is an obvious way to utilize these infrastructures and the people and their knowledge there. And of course also thesis works, especially in connection to research projects. The schools were very and universities were very eager to establish a research project together with, for example, research institutes and pilot service providers, and kind of thesis works are very kind of interesting. And these are of course taking place even today, but they could be done more and more systematic way. One thing that came up is the trainer activities. So also the teachers will participate in these and would of course benefit there to know what the opportunities and that's of course an important part. So these were kind of outcome that these kind of things can be done, and we have prepared an action plan here in Finland to test different options here more. But it's not as simple as you could thought. I mean, the pilot plants, as well in our case, and also the European counterparts that I know, they are not an education provider. There is some pilot plants. Some universities has good pilot plants. For example, in Denmark there's one, but mostly they are not the education providers. So therefore, if more kind of demanding courses are organized than this kind of visit, then that means resources and extra arrangements, and meaning also money, funding to make these kind of things. It's possible, but it's more complicated. And then coaching and supervision of trainees or internship people in laboratory and pilot plant, it requires quite much resources and specific arrangements in occupational safety and confidentiality issues. These are of course possible to overcome, and they have to be overcome, and they are organized, but they need a special effort, but most often they can be tailored, and they have to be tailored for each pilot. Then a simple issue that there's some lack of information on supply and demand and training placements. So what kind of training placements or internship placements there are, and who are the contact people, just to have more contact between pilot providers and teachers and schools is important. I think this is was my last slide, and the main challenge message that it is possible to increase the use of pilot plants. There's a need, but often it has to be limited to some kind of things that are kind of feasible for the pilot providers. And if anything else is done, then it requires funding and extra resources. Here are some pictures from our pilot center here in Helsinki area, so you can see what kind of process equipment are typically needed to scale up, for example, new textile fiber technologies or producing new bio-based chemicals with a gasification technology. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mika. I'm going to hand over to our colleague Carmen. As I already said on the chat, please, if we are running a bit late, so if any of you has to leave, we will be sending all the presentations, but hopefully you can all stay. So Carmen is going to present us the UrBIOfuture experience. She is from CTA, one of the project partners, and she will also present us all the upcoming actions for this project. Thank you, Carmen.
Hello, thank you for introducing Anna. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so I'm going to be brief, but please stay till the end because I'm going to give you some important information. As my partners have been explaining, the bioeconomy is an important part of the economy because it uses renewable biological resources to produce food, material, and energy. So things that we use on a daily basis. So having that in mind, I'm going to talk about the UrBIOfuture experience and its coming actions. The UrBIOfuture project wanted to create an experience, a journey, or a passage where two different worlds interact, the world of industry and the world of society, represented as professional students and unemployed people that want to develop their professional career in a rising sector like the bioeconomy. So it means that the UrBIOfuture experience has the objective to raise the presence of professional people specialized in bioeconomy in the industry, more exactly in the bio-based industry in Europe. Therefore, what this project has created to accomplish the mission of raising the presence of professional people specialized in bioeconomy in the European bio-based industry is the so-called UrBIOfuture experience. And this UrBIOfuture experience has different outcomes, as we can see here in the slide. And in a brief, what this want to accomplish is to create a figurative toolbox that contains unusual things, like instead of hammer or screwdriver, this figurative toolbox has, for instance, promotional events, a web page, materials, and so on, that the target audience that I explained to you before can use to live this experience. So, for example, we have in the project web page a section where job opportunities related to bioeconomy are published. Also, we have information about bio-based pilot plans where you could work for, and educational programs from all Europe that could study for a specialization on bioeconomy. There, here in the web page, we have an interactive geographical map where you can see all the bioeconomy educational programs gathered by the project. And just to let you know, this web page is continuously being actualized. Also, we have produced brochures. Here are some screenshots with all this information gathered and more that is available on our website and in social media. And last but not least, we have the events tailor-made for you. We have open access events and where you can learn how to interact more with the bio-based industry. And on the other hand, we have events planned to act as an afterlife project plan, such as the Train the Trainer event and the Train the Student event. Right now, the upcoming events are planned all over Europe, and this is the important information. We have already scheduled 5 events, so save the date, keep an eye on our social media and webpage, and be prepared. The first event is going to be in Poland, where university students, focused in university students, and focused on how to approach the bio-based sector. The second one is in Finland for VET students and within a real bio-based pilot plan. And the next one is in Belgium for unemployed people, focusing on attracting professionals to the bio-based industry. And also a similar one, the thematic is going to be placed in Spain at the end of March. Also, we are going to organize in Italy a workshop for young students and their role in bioeconomy. These are the 5 ones that are planned, but we have other 4 events for VET students, young students, professional and university students that are going to be defined in the future. You need to keep an eye on social media to know more about this. All this information is summarized in this list I have prepared for you. So you are going to have this on the PDF. And please keep an eye on our social media and the project webpage where the registration form will be shared. So that's it. If you have any question, we are here.
Thank you very much, Carmen, for your presentation and all this information. So I don't know if you have any questions. We still have a few minutes if you want to make any questions. And otherwise, look, we have a question here. They are asking us what kind of formation may the unemployed people have in order to get the ideas on those seminars that we are talking about. They are asking you specifically, Carmen. I'm gonna, if it's okay for you, I'm gonna give a reply, and then if you want to add something, please go ahead. So I don't think unemployed people need, well, I don't think any of the participants in these events need to have a previous formation because the goal of these events is to reach as many people as possible. And anyone could later on study something or get some skills on the bioeconomy and on the bio-based industry. So even if it's people who are not, who don't have previous experience or knowledge in this field, they could come in and find out how they could pivot their careers, how they could become a specialist in other fields, such as the bio-based industry. I'm not sure if this replies the question, and whether you want to ask to add anything, Carmen.
Well, just to remind you that there's a list of events you would like to attend to know a bit more about the UrBIOfuture experience and how to be part of bioeconomy and with all these educational programs on all these job opportunities. And all the information is gathered in the webpage and in social media. That's it.
Okay, Thank you very much. Yes, this is the email where you can drop us any other questions that or comments that may come up to your mind. And as Carmen is saying, you can stay tuned to our website and our social media, where we will be updating you with all the news, new materials, new events, and everything. And well, I don't know if you have any other further questions. Before you leave, I would also like to ask you for a favor, and please take 1 minute to fill in the survey that will appear now when the meeting is over, which will help us a lot to know how can we improve, what do you think of this webinar, if it was useful, and so on. And if nobody has any further comments or questions, I think we can leave it here. And thank you very much to all of you for your time and your interest. Hope you have a nice day, all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.